This is KC Sports Tonight.
And here we are. It is 5:30. Time for the new streaming version of KC Sports Tonight. Scott Reiss, and look who's in the other box. Neal Jones making his streaming debut on the show. And Neal, I've spent the first minute or so just sort of explaining to the folks what the heck we're doing here, because clearly this is a much different format than people are probably used to on the TV version that, of course, had aired at 6:30 for the last year and a half. It's basically us hanging out talking sports.
And I think it's important to say, if you're expecting us to cuss or tell off-colored stories,
you've come to the right place.
But this is the guy right here.
Right.
He's the guy. He's been doing streaming a lot longer than I have. So all bets are off on what Scott Reiss might say.
You know what? With all the technology, you can't see it here, but all the technology that I have at my fingertips, there's got to be a bleep button here somewhere that would allow us to not really have to worry about that.
Are you going to bleep yourself?
I'll let that go. Okay, so anyway, so we're on the app, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, Roku. We're pretty much everywhere you get your stream, and then everywhere you get your podcasts. This becomes an audio podcast every night after the show, so you can even watch us or listen to us after the fact while you're driving around. What's better than listening to Neal Jones while you're driving around Kansas City?
I watched the first installment of this live, about half of it, at a McDonald's. I had some surgery in the morning, and they said, don't drive, but I drove anyway because my wife was sleeping and I was starved. So I drove up to McDonald's, and I was watching it, and I was very interested to see the format. It's a little different than what we do. Of course, we do a lot of roundtables, which are unscripted, and they can devolve occasionally into pretty good sports discussions or just below the level of an argument when you have subjects that people disagree on. You and I generally agree on things because we are of age to know what's going on. Jared Kohler is the one we usually argue with because Jared is ready to put every Royal ever into the Hall of Fame, and you and I are a little more discerning, I think.
Which brings us to your Kansas City Royals. Man, what a 24 hours, right? I don't know if you saw the end of last night's game.
I did not.
So they're up by 2 with 2 out in the ninth. Brewers with 2 on, and Willy Adames hits a 3-run homer off of James MacArthur. They were 1 out away from, now it turns out, what would have been a series sweep against a first-place team in Milwaukee, which would have been fantastic. But as it stands, they bounce back nicely today. They score runs late. They win 6-4, so they take 2 out of 3 against the Brewers. It's a fascinating team to unpack at this point. The starting pitching continues to just be absurdly good. I mean, you see Brady Singer's line today. He pitches into the 6th, gives up just the 1 run. It seems like every single day the starting pitching keeps him in the game, gives him a good chance to win. The question is, do they hit enough? And last night the bullpen leaked and they wound up losing the game.
My wife and I went out last night and went up to Taco Tuesday and ate a bunch of tacos and drank iced tea. And while the Royals, they were down 2-0 when we sat down, and they quickly came back and they did it. MJ Melendez, who has not been hitting but continues to be a tremendous athlete. He's the guy that turns a single into a double or a double into a triple, which is what he did against Milwaukee, and he's being brought in by Kyle Isbell, who's not been hitting well, hitting in the 9-hole or the 8-hole last night, and he finds a way to get him in. That's what I like about this team, Scott. I don't know that they are the most talented team around, but you know what? They got the 3rd best record in the American League, and a lot of it mainly because of starting pitching, like you've said, but I also think they've had some timely hitting, and they can run on the base pass. They look like a very, very physically gifted team, and that's fun to watch.
It's aggressive. It is a fun brand of baseball. They steal a ton of bases. They got a kid, Dairon Blanco, who is essentially the designated pinch runner, but he plays just about every game. A dude's got more stolen bases than I think than at bats, right? I mean, it's crazy, but you bring him in. Salvi gets on in the 7th or 8th. You pinch run Blanco, and more often than not, he winds up stealing second. He comes around to score, and that's big late in the game.
He went into that game, or one of the earlier games, I guess it was Sunday's game, because I was listening to it driving back from Kansas Speedway in the rainstorm I sat through. Thank you very much for assigning me the rainy NASCAR race, Scott. I appreciate that.
Yep, there for you. Yep.
And it ends up being the closest race of all time in the history of NASCAR.
That was something, wasn't it?
And I'm so happy for the fans. There were so many people that were hanging around. It wasn't really cold, but there was a north wind that cooled things off, and it was kind of misting or sprinkling for much of the afternoon. So I know there were some people who were wet And I'm so glad that they were rewarded by the fact that they were able to get the race in, and it ends up being a really, really exciting race. Some of those NASCAR races are not fun. That was a fun one. I'm driving back from the rainstorm before the race restarted, and I was listening to the game, and they were talking about Blanco. Blanco at that time had 8 steals and only 1 caught stealing, and it reminds me of 2014 and 15 when Ned Yost would use a designated fast guy, and they would find a way to steal a run late in the game, either to tie it or an insurance run, and that is fun, especially if you have a manager who gets how to use it.
Yeah, no, and Matt Quatraro has really pushed most of the right buttons this year. He's got to be having a blast. I mean, last year, what were they, 8-26 at this point in the season, and you're thinking, boy, this is going to be a long 5 months, playing out the string in May. And, first-year manager and so gung-ho for the job, and it's just, it was over before it started. He's got to be having so much fun being able to do what he does and bring the managerial savvy and the analytics to the table in games that matter, almost a quarter into the season.
Last year when they were so awful, you wondered how much of that is him and how much of it is his pitching coach, how much of that is just the lack of chemistry, the inability to get things done on that specific roster. Obviously, they remade the roster, but I think what we've learned is that he does know how to manage.
Yes.
And I was impressed with him at times last year by the way he handled himself after tough losses. He didn't make a lot of excuses. He didn't dance around. I hated the guy he replaced for that reason. I thought he had an ability to throw a wet blanket over a parade, and he did not know how to handle a team when things were going bad. And I know Mike Matheny knows a lot of baseball, a lot more than he's forgotten more than I've ever known, but it was difficult to watch him and this team while he was the manager. And I do feel like that this guy's got a chance, in my mind, to be the best manager in the American League this year. And it doesn't mean he's going to win Manager of the Year, because whoever wins the East or something's probably going to get a lot of attention for that.
I tell you what, if they're in contention, he's going to be at the front of the line for that award, because that's how you win Manager of the Year. You take a team that had no expectations and you make them a contender, and that's exactly what the Royals are right now. Now, Cleveland, Detroit, same situation, so we'll see how all that goes.
Last year I was sitting out there and I was shooting as close as you can get. It used to be you could be right up on the screen during BP, during batting practice, but I was out there as far as I could get, and I could actually hear the manager talking to the hitters. And there was a guy who, you're supposed to lay down a couple of bunts before you swing away during batting practice. There was a guy, the first 2 rotations, he never got a bunt fair. And Quatraro, rather than give him a long speech, just said, hey, you're going to need to get that down at some point, right? That's going to help your career. You need to be able to get it down. And I don't remember who it was. It was a big guy. It was not Sasquatch, because he was already injured.
Franmil Reyes, maybe?
but basically what he was saying is, in not so many words, look, if you want to stay, you got to start to do that. Yeah. You've got to be able to move runners. But he didn't do it. It didn't take very, but he made his point. And I was impressed by that. And as I said, after losses, I thought he didn't overreact. He talked about what the problems were, but he didn't let the final score dictate the whole game. They might lose 5-2, and he's like, you know what? We got 4.5 great innings from our starter, from a young guy that we hope can be good. That's what I'm going to take away from this. No, we didn't win, but I thought there were a lot of positive things, and he knew how to do that. But then at the same time, he wasn't a spin doctor. When things were bad, he said, hey, that's terrible.
Yeah, no, and he's a player's manager. And what I mean by that is he has their backs. He believes in his guys. And today's game, James MacArthur, the closer, last night gave it up. The game before gave it up. So he'd blown back-to-back saves, and he threw like 30 pitches last night. But tonight, they go to the 9th inning. It's 6-2. You figure you're not going to need the closer. Tyler Duffy starts. 2 runs. It's 6-4, tying run at the plate. And Quatraro's like, okay, I'm going to my guy. He goes right back to MacArthur with 1 out. Gets the 2nd out, gets the 3rd out, ball game, and he said, hey, that's my guy. I'm going to stick with him.
What happened, by the way? I did not see the ending, but then I read about it on ESPN.com, and so I guess they're getting the AP story. And they're saying that the guy that hit the home run, the game-winning home run in the 9th inning, top of the 9th for the Milwaukee Brewers,
Willie Adames,
that he was talking back and forth with some Royals fans in a very good-natured way, and that after the game, he even signed a baseball for him.
Oh, really?
What Royals fans want to stick around after a loss to say, hey, sign our baseball? And I mean, they were giving him grief, and he was saying, hey, give me one more bat. If I get up to the plate, you guys are going to be in trouble. And it was good-natured, and he had fun with it. And I'm like, I don't know that I really enjoyed this. And I don't really know that I'm going to read that in Kansas City. I guess that's what they wrote in ESPN.com, but I wasn't too thrilled. I didn't really want to read about how wonderful it was for the guy that beat the Royals.
Yeah, well, didn't beat him today, and Kansas City wins 2 out of 3 on the road. First West Coast swing. They go to Anaheim tomorrow. You see the pitching matchup, Michael Wacha and Reed Detmers for game 1 of a 4-game series with the Mike Troutless, again, Angels in Anaheim. Okay, so Rashee Rice. I mean, where do you begin? The news yesterday, which I'm sure you've heard by now, is reports out of Dallas that Rashee Rice was involved in an altercation 2:30 in the morning at a Dallas area night spot, and that there is an investigation of possible assault, which would be troubling enough had we not been 4 weeks removed from the first incident this offseason with the Lamborghini and the accident and leaving the scene, and he's already acknowledged wrongdoing on that front. But, I mean, Neal, what are we doing here? Because this is now a potential really big deal for Rashee Rice, for the Chiefs, for the NFL.
He's 23, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right, 23-year-olds aren't always, and think about it, he's a young guy who has money for the first time, and he's back there where he went to college in Dallas, and he can go out with his friends. He can do things he probably, I don't know his circumstance. Maybe he came from a lot of money, so I don't want to pretend that he came out of some impoverished background.
Sure.
But I think when I was 23, I went out all the time. The difference was I was on TV, but I wasn't wealthy. I could see, and I told my wife, well, I wonder if it's an altercation. Does that mean somebody was giving him crap and he shoved the guy away? Well, that's assault. Or was it because somebody said something to who he was with or whatever, and he said something back? Right. You don't know. You would like to think I would go home and watch television and hang out with my friends or with my family and stay out of trouble. But he's 23 years old. It's the off season. You want to go out and do stuff. So I'd like to know all the facts before I damn him. But the fact of the matter is he cannot afford to get in more trouble, because at the end of the day, he's going to have to go to New York, probably with an attorney, and he's going to have to meet with the league, and he's going to have to state his case. And it's not a court of law. It's not just the facts. It's also the perception. And the league is going to protect itself. The perception is you're running amok and you're doing all this stuff. We don't really care about the facts. We don't want you out there sullying our good name, the league's name, and your franchise's name. And, oh, by the way, who else lives in Dallas? The owner, Clark Hunt. So you can bet he's reading, and I know it's all over the television down there. I do radio down there, and every show, that's all they want to talk about is Rashee Rice. And so I don't know all the facts, but I know this. At some point, he needs to be out of the news and just lay low and get back playing football, so that we're looking at a 4-week suspension instead of a 9-week suspension.
Well, and I think that's the problem is had this been an isolated incident, I think the public perception would have been exactly what you just said. Well, okay, these things happen. Let's wait for the facts. Benefit of the doubt. I don't know that you get benefit of the doubt when you have just committed the infraction of a month ago and you're drag racing a Lamborghini at 110 miles an hour. You don't get the public benefit of the doubt. All of a sudden now people are like, oh my God, this guy again. That's going to work against you in terms of the public perception. And I think it could work against you when it comes to the NFL and possible discipline. Now, they're not going to do this right away. They will wait for the legal process to play out. That's how they roll. So it may not be week 1. It may not be week 4. This could get really complicated, because if the legal proceedings and the legal process on both of these fronts, isn't resolved by training camp by summer, then the NFL is not going to suspend him. It's not going to happen right away. So everybody's going to kind of have to wait to see what happens on that front first. But I guess, Neal, my point is, like, the fact that now you're dealing with 2 separate incidents kind of on top of each other. Maybe the NFL is thinking, well, it was going to be a 4-game suspension, but then the guy went around and now he did something else. Maybe now it's a 6 or an 8-game suspension. This could make a real tangible difference for Rashee Rice and for the Chiefs this season, or maybe even next season, depending on how long this goes.
Well, I got a couple of questions that need to be answered, I think, before you can judge. Was he drinking? If so, was he intoxicated?
Right.
Is there video? What's the evidence? If the video is some guys yelling at him and yelling at maybe his date or doing something that were provocative, and he does one of these and comes in contact with a person, that's a lot different than someone who's out there and gets in a fight in the parking lot or going in and out. We don't know what happened.
Right. No, we don't.
I've heard some horrible stories over the years about people that lived in the dorm where I went to school that were football players, and then there were no video, but then you talk to people who were there and they're like, no, a bunch of people were yelling at him, and he yelled at him back, and that was the altercation. But then also, Scott, I've heard situations I was told nothing really happened, and then you had witnesses step forward and say, no, the player did this, and it was much worse than it came out in the news media. So a lot of it depends on what the video evidence shows, and hopefully, not just because I root for the Chiefs. I would feel this way if he played for the Denver Broncos, whom I hate. I would hope for his sake that it's not a serious thing, and it's something they just go, look, Rashee, just tone it down.
Yeah, I mean, look, super talented player. You want him to be on the field. You don't want this stuff to take away from any of it. So it's unfortunate. And we'll see as more details become available, obviously, on incident number 2, as it were. Quickly, anything jump out at you? I know you were at rookie minicamp last week. Anything interesting?
Yeah, I was very impressed with Xavier Worthy. As you know, I hated him with a passion because he played at the University of Texas. But over his 3 years there, I came to respect him a lot. The first time it was because he had a massive game as a freshman, true freshman, in the Red River Showdown or Shootout or whatever they call it, the OU Texas series. He had a huge game, 191 yards receiving. I think he had 2 touchdowns. But Scott, it was his reaction to the as big a mistake as you can make. You're in that environment, which, with no disrespect to the Super Bowl, is about 100 times more intense than the Super Bowl. Because on every single play, you got 96,000 people in the stadium. On every single play, somebody's going nuts because it's split evenly, 50-50. The tickets go out 50-50.
Sure.
And he fumbles a ball, returning it in ill-advised, returning it out of the Oklahoma just scored a touchdown to tie the game with, I don't know, a minute and a half to 2 minutes to go. He fumbles, has the ball taken away from him, basically. He wasn't hit. A linebacker just came in and ripped the ball out before he went down, returning the kick. Oklahoma recovers. They score a touchdown. They take a 7-point lead. Texas is dead. They are done. He's a freshman. He's walking over. It looks like he's crying. Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator and head coach, puts his arm around him. They kick off. Sarkisian sends him back in the game. They throw it to him on the next play. He catches it and makes a guy miss, goes for a nice gain, and then has a massive catch later on in the drive. They end up scoring, and it looked like they were going to win. Oklahoma won on the last play of the game because they scored too early. But I was so impressed with the way he came back, and Kirk Herbstreit did a great job as a color analyst explaining what was going on. Oh my gosh, this kid playing, he's a freshman playing with all these juniors and seniors on this Texas team. They haven't beaten Oklahoma, and then he fumbles the ball. Oh my gosh. But then the redemption, the fact that he kept his chin up, he was distraught, but he went back out and made plays and did a great job. That told me a lot about him, and then I followed him ever since. He's had a great career. He's played so many positions for Texas. They would move him around to try to find him a spot to get open, very much like Andy Reid moves around his receivers. When he had Tyreek Hill, he'd move him around, put him in the slot, put him in motion. Did the same thing, obviously, with his great tight end, Travis Kelce. They'll hide him and try to find ways to get him in one-on-one coverage. So I think that they're going to find ways to – I think he's going to be successful. He's also going to be an asset in the kick and punt return game. They were really coaching him up on that. I can't wait. Plus, obviously, there's also we all know about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. What's the name of the guy from Wales?
Louis Reiss Zammit.
Okay. A number of women who work at this station are in love with him. I foresee another thing like that. I don't want to say any names, but a couple of them are single young anchors. One of them told me he's exactly the same age I am. He's single. And I said, the stats I was looking at was the fact he's 6'3", whatever he is, 220. He's really fast.
Isn't he like 23? 22?
So at any rate, I'm just telling you that could end up being just as big a romance as what we see with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
The next big thing in Kansas City, you heard it here first. Okay. That brings us to a segment that can only happen when Neal Jones is on the program. I'm calling it The World According to Neal. And so this just basically would be your thoughts on pretty much anything. But why don't we start with the feature that you went on and shot today, because it's a really good story.
Yeah, Bishop Ward is in KCK, and I don't think they get a lot of support from around the city. You see that some of these Catholic schools are rolling in money, and they have great facilities, great academic facilities, great athletic facilities. And we go over and cover Bishop Ward, and they're in a very, very venerable building. They opened their doors in 1908. They have been a success both academically and athletically for much of that time. I love going over there and doing positive stories. They have great baseball teams. They've won, I think, more state championships than anybody in the state of Kansas. I think, don't quote me, but I believe that was what I saw. I'm going to go back and look my notes up from a story I did about 4 or 5 years ago. But Scott, it's fun to see those guys. They're 20-0. They've outscored the opposition like 228 runs to 20. In those 20 games, they're averaging obviously over 10 runs a game. They're going into the playoffs later this week. I'm hoping they do well. They're in class 3 or 4, and the big class schools will not play them because they don't want to get their tail ends beaten in by this team. They're kind of a senior team. They're a bunch of kids. And listen, they could have played anywhere. These are a bunch of players who are really good players who could go. They're a Catholic school. They could go to a different Catholic school. They could go to a rich public school in Johnson County. But they've stuck around. They're playing with the same group of kids that they've grown up together playing from grade school on. So it's a fun story. We're going to have it tonight on KCTV 5 News at 10. In the news segment, so I'm not going to have 4 minutes. It's going to be like a minute and a half.
Well, Neal cannot be censored. If you need 4 minutes, you take 4 minutes. You tell him I said so. There's no weather, I'm told, after today. So, we finally get a nice
weather.
We finally get a nice weather week. They don't need to,
No. There's weather. There's a cloud somewhere in our viewing area. So they're going to investigate the cloud and see what's happening. But, Scott, it's interesting. They've started a $7.5 million capital improvement campaign at Bishop Ward. And they've already raised over $3 million. And I think that this baseball team can maybe help them reach out to some of their alumni. And they've completely updated they used to be the library. Now it's the media center. And Scott, you walk in there, it's like walking into an Ivy League school because they have photos of the class photos that go back to 1908 right there on the wall. And a lot of famous people, anybody who is anybody in Catholic from KCK or from Wyandotte County, they probably went to Bishop Ward. So they've really had an impressive group of people. It turned out kids who've gone to Ivy League schools and been great successes. So it's fun to see them have some success on the field and hope they can turn that into success off the field as well.
Super cool. You can catch that feature again tonight on the 10 o'clock news. And you can catch Neal on this very program for the next 2 days. It'll be you and Marlia tomorrow. You and I will be back on Friday. And
so you're giving me top billing over Marlia?
Sure. You know what? Whoever comes in here and types the names first gets top billing. So I'll let you guys.
So I think one of the segments is going to be our favorite Scott Reiss stories.
You can do that. That's that should take at least.
You're off tomorrow. You're going to be out of the city, or
no, I'll be here.
Oh, so
I'll be around.
Okay, well maybe we won't do it. I'd like to do it when you were not available.
When I'm actually gone.
Yeah.
Hey, But see, that's impossible because now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, every one of these episodes will become a podcast. So I can, even if I could be in, Belgium, and I can go to my phone and I can.
You've been banned from Belgium. Okay, you've been banned from Belgium. That won't happen.
Cool. All right. Good stuff.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
What I really wanted to say, to be honest with you, was don't pay attention to all these Chiefs workouts in the offseason. People go nuts over who's running first team, who's.
Oh, yeah.
They're not wearing pads. They're not
no.
wearing helmets. I understand that the internet is based on clicks, and so we want your clicks. Internet sites want your clicks. Sports talk radio is based on listening, so they want you to listen. I know we all get all verklempt and, oh, my gosh, their receivers look terrible. It's not football. It's like intramural football.
Right.
They're not wearing pads. What they're trying to teach them is the playbook. The rookies learn the vernacular, learn the plays. That's what this is about now. It's not about who looks good and who doesn't look good and all that stuff.
And, of course, you're going to have to remind everybody of that in about a week, and then in about 3 weeks, and then in about when we hit training camp, once we get closer to actual real football with pads and all that. But that's exciting. Gives folks something to talk about, and they're not going to stop talking about the Chiefs ever. We know that. So
I got a question. There's no clock.
There is no clock.
So usually there's a clock when you do this.
There's
and
one
so
on my computer screen right
Oh,
here.
there is
that's
one
how
over
I
there?
know. If you look to your left there, you'll see one at the bottom of the TV screen.
I can't see it.
Yeah.
This is a great. I love this.
Yeah, no, it's
This
good.
is fun. This is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to attack Jared when I'm on with him.
He'll be back from vacation next week, and you guys can have at it. It's going to be fun. And the beauty of this is we can do it from anywhere. So eventually, you'll be at the K or at Arrowhead. Or
What are you doing tomorrow? Why don't you do it with me tomorrow?
If you want to send out a camera tomorrow, you can come to my son's Little League game. That's where I'll be. I'm happy to
Yelling at
shoot
the
the breeze
umpire.
with you at 5:30.
Yelling at the
yeah.
umpires.
Yeah, giving them the business, exactly. All right, don't forget, podcast everywhere you get your podcast tonight and every night. Thanks for checking out the new KC Sports Tonight. I'll see you on the 10 o'clock news, and Neal on tape. We'll see you at the 10 o'clock news as well.